Hello, podcast world. Welcome to Balance Life Mastery, the show where we talk about all things high performance and life balance without the burnout. Stories, insights, and actionable tips on creating the life you deserve, giving you and your teams the unfair competitive advantage in work and personal life.
Welcome everyone to episode number 5. Today we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, a term that I had no clue existed just a couple of years ago. Didn't even know what it meant, didn't resonate for me, but as I dug a little deeper and on my personal development path, I learned more about. So the technical definition of imposter syndrome is this internal feeling or experience of believing that you're not as competent as others perceive you to be, right? And it's quite related to intelligence and achievement, and it has its links to perfectionism and in terms of a social context. But to put it simply, imposter syndrome is the feeling that you're a phony. And for a very long time, I couldn't resonate with that. And I think we're going to get into that a little bit more later on. But in terms of why it didn't, was because although I experienced different elements of imposter syndrome, everyone does, I couldn't relate to feeling like a phony. So I just we thought it would be pretty cool to share with you guys the different types of imposter syndrome and how it might appear in your day-to-day life, and how it really holds you back, because it is a big hurdle or kink in the road. So in terms of types of imposter syndrome, there's the superhero, right? The superhero is the person who overworks themselves to make up for how inadequate they feel. Okay, and that's where the phoniness comes in, right? Jeremy, stick your hand up when you relate to one of them, please, all right? But I'm going to tell you which one I relate to. Then we've got the natural genius. Jeremy's hand goes up.
To be fair, I think they go up every time because there's a little touch of on most, but yeah, no, I'll hold fire for now.
Cool, but so natural genius is basically setting exceedingly high goals and feeling crushed when you don't meet them. So that was definitely me. I had a very much all or nothing, black or white perspective and mindset. I thought that it was big goal or nothing at all, and I just stay in mediocre land. And then there's the expert, who is never satisfied with their level of understanding, always trying to learn more. And this is where knowledge is not power, right? So knowledge can be power if it's put into action, but it is not power. And a lot of people get on this learning train of learning more. And I must say, learning, it's become one of my highest values. If you haven't listened to the values episode, go back and listen to that. But it is on my highest values, but I know what I'm doing, and I have a purpose to the certain things that I'm learning. So yeah, and again, we can get into a little bit more detail soon. But the next one is the perfectionist. So never feeling completely happy with their work, always fixated on flaws instead of kind of strengths and the progress that's being made. And this is one of the most common. It's not being able to recognize any progress, especially when it's little bits of progress, which is actually the most realistic way progress is made. And then finally, we have the soloist. Someone who prefers to work alone, someone who won't ask for help, someone who fears appearing weak or incompetent in front of colleagues, in front of bosses. And I stick my hand up massively here as well. I remember my last boss once said to me, he was like, Dina, ask for help when you need it. It is okay. He's like, are you okay? And I'm like, yeah, I'm fine. And literally, I have this heart stuff going on within me behind on the other side of the phone. But that's essentially it. Those are kind of the 5 types. And when I broke this down, it really made sense to me in terms of how it can show up for us. And we're going to go through a few ways to identify imposter syndrome. But yeah, Jeremy, how have you experienced it?
I just want to say, for the people that are listening to the podcast and they're not watching the YouTube channel, every time Dina laughed when she said a type was because my hand shot up. And yeah, it's really funny. From an IT background, I'm a perfectionist. We deal in ones and zeros. Systems are supposed to be available, but there's so many gremlins in the system that you can't understand. But I've got some really good news for everyone. Like 70% of high achievers suffer from imposter syndrome, right? So if you just listen to what Dina said and you're like, oh, I've got some of those, congratulations, it means you're a high performer. And I think a lot of people think like imposter syndrome is a bad thing, but in some ways it's a good thing, because it means you're a high achiever. It means you've got these goals. If 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 someone sits and watches TV all day and doesn't have a job and just bimbles through life, they'll never have imposter syndrome. So actually, imposter syndrome is a pain in the ass when you have it, but actually it's because you are a high performer. It's because you're always trying to strive for something better, for improving yourself. And there is obviously the risks and dangers to that, but you do have to remember it's because you're striving for something better, because you're not happy with the status quo. And I always think that's really important. It's, there's a limit to it, but don't ever think that it's not all good, it's not all bad. There is some real power to having imposter syndrome. It can drive you to do some incredible things, but it has its side effects. So if you can work with those, it's incredible. And you said about my experience of it. Probably two things really pinged to mind. And firstly, whenever my boss said, "Have you got 5 minutes?" I was convinced I was getting fired. And you get a WhatsApp a Teams message or something, and I was like properly convinced I was either getting fired or I had got something completely wrong. And I would walk into that meeting, and your back's up, you're defensive, and it's never a good interaction, even if it was like something that was fine. You're walking into that situation sort of like tense, ready for that the fight, flight, freeze thing, and you've either shut down mentally and emotionally, or you're going in there with figurative fists clenched, ready for combat. So you're not going in a collaborative, open manner. So that always used to reflect in me. And I once I knew about imposter syndrome and I knew about my trigger, I really started to be mindful of it and be a bit more conscious. And then I was able to kind of manage that, because it's like having to think about what have I just done that week, and I haven't actually screwed up, not that week anyway. So and then the other one which really popped out as you went through the list was I can't remember if I mentioned this before, but I started a blog called the Lucky IT Professional once, right? And I started this because I was pretty junior, but I was doing really well. I was progressing, I was getting loads of experience and stuff. And I put everything down to being in the right place at the right time. And someone must have just left. And oh, well, there's no one else that could do it. And Jeremy's happy to work weekends. And it was that everything successful that I was doing was put down to just right place, right time. Oh, he's a friendly person. And it's incredible how that can eventually demoralize you, because you're feeling like, I'm not making progress. I just happen to be given the keys to the kingdom.
You know what? And that is spot on, because imposter syndrome is actually a vicious cycle, because for a lot of high achievers, it can actually fuel motivation to achieve, right? But what ends up happening is it usually comes at a cost of like this constant anxiety, because you'll over prepare for work, right? For a meeting, to make sure that nobody kind of finds out that you don't know what you're talking about, or something of the sort. And then in your head, it'll be the only reason you would have survived that presentation or whatever it might be is because you stayed up all night rehearsing, or all night like memorizing script or whatever it is. And then you end up, when you do something well, it does nothing to change your beliefs about yourself, because you're in this cycle. So even though you might sail through some sort of performance or whatever that might be, it still sits in your head, that kind of what gives me the right to be here? And the more you accomplish, you just feel like a fraud. So that's kind of, it is a very, very vicious cycle.
You're spot on, because I had an anxiety toolkit, which maybe we'll talk about in a future episode. But yeah, and any time I successfully dealt with my anxiety, I put it down to the toolkit that I had, not down to actually coping with the situation. And it's that same thing. It's like, yeah, it's like that again, disregarding your actual capability and assuming this crutch was the thing.
Exactly that. Have you got any tips? Because yeah, that was a big one for me. It's kind of identifying it, and I'll share a few things because I have a few kind of ideas in terms of how to identify it. But have you got a few tips to share in terms of how to deal with it?
Yeah, absolutely. And these are well-worn paths that I've had to use quite a lot, and then actually something I used to talk to my team about a lot, because again, so many more people have it than realize, and also they don't know what it is, so you just have to ease into it. But the first one is just really cutting yourself some slack and realizing you've never said you know everything. Apart from maybe when you go into like a job application and you say you can do it all. But often we put this pressure on ourselves that if you're the head of a certain function, that you should know everything about that technology. You should know all the law, or the detail about everything that you're looking to do, and that can really set you up for a false expectation on yourself. People don't expect you to have the answers. I think when we went into lockdown was really interesting, because loads of people had imposter syndrome then and really struggled because they felt like they weren't capable of handling that situation. Like whether it was running their business, running their teams, like how to run their personal life. It's like, my God, this is like a once in a lifetime event, hopefully, where, do you know what? You didn't know how to move 80% of your staff off site in 2 weeks. Well, that's normal. But so many people felt like they weren't doing a good job because they couldn't work out how to move thousands of people out of the office, or they couldn't work out how to deliver a service when they were suddenly shut down, or how do you finance something? Like, the world changed. Like, cut yourself some slack.
You know what? All of these things that you've said, all of these questions that you've just asked, they all relate to one thing. It's something new, right? When we don't know something, or we're entering into unknown space, that is when imposter syndrome is at its peak, because it's either we're transitioning, or we're growing, or we're adapting to a new environment, and it's that pressure to achieve and succeed combined with lack of experience, which is completely normal in anything new, and that's what triggers that inadequacy, or the not feeling good enough. So I think that 100%.
Yeah, and that feeling triggers probably another thing that people do, and you should sort of keep under control, and that's that chasing learning, like you mentioned, and that continuous search for certifications to feel like you need to prove your worth. You need to be able to say that you can, again, like from my IT background, it was like, getting certified on the next version of a cloud technology, or a certain new technology. And it's the problem is you're going to search for this and feel like that's going to fulfill you, and it will help, but there's always going to be things that you don't know, or if you've gone and learned something that you never implement, there's that kind of frustration element. So it's actually being more comfortable to not know the answers, but also learn on demand. I mean, there's so much knowledge out there, to say, we've just started a project that's going to run with this new piece of software. Go learn it then. Like that, the expectation is that's when you would kind of learn it, not knowing everything in advance of a project kicking off, because you're just kind of spinning yourself and making yourself feel bad.
Yeah, 100%.
One that I really like to do, and this is probably by far the sort of strongest way to really start getting over imposter syndrome, and that's mentor either junior staff or staff that aren't as far along their journey as you are, because we all have this mountain of knowledge that we sit on, that we don't see because it's below us, and we're still sort of still looking up at the peak of the CEO, the CIO, the VP, or whoever we want to be, and we're looking at how big their stack is. You forget everything that's underneath you. So spending time with, people that are a job grade below you or are in a different function, and talking to them about what you do or helping them is incredible, because there's so many things that you take for granted that are, like, probably 90% of the world doesn't know, especially if it's specific to your career. And I think we often get caught in this trap of devaluing the knowledge we have and overvaluing the knowledge that we see other people with, and just starting to teach people. And it's one of the performance habits that we talk about is, learn daily. So whether that's podcasts, YouTube videos, reading a book or whatever, but also teach, or show people things daily, because getting into that habit of educating people, sharing knowledge, you suddenly realize that fountain of knowledge, or that mountain, or whatever, like, little outdoory thing that I'm going to use as my example today, it gets it over, because you do know a ton of stuff. It's just you're not thinking about it.
And also for a lot of, especially people who are trying to be leaders in their teams, or they're growing in their companies, etc. Often we're told to hang around with people, or we aspire to hang around with the people that we look up to, right? So people who are higher than us, or our colleagues that we look up to. And what happens there is that they're constantly, which is completely normal, they're constantly one step ahead. So we feel we're on this kind of hamster wheel or chase to get better. And there's a reason why the online education industry has skyrocketed from below $1 million industry to now $3.6 billion in a year and a half, because everyone is now realizing that there is more and more space to teach knowledge, because everyone has knowledge, everyone has skills to share, everyone has uniqueness about them to teach other people. And that's why this industry is so successful and is absolutely booming. So in that respect, give yourself the chance to teach people, to put yourself in that position where you can be valued for your knowledge, for your experience, be it actual industry experience or just life experience, right?
Absolutely. That's such an important thing, because everyone says you're the average of the 5 people you hang around with. So there is that always that, well, if I just go hang out with the VPs, brilliant. But the imposter syndrome will get you. What I always think you should do is kind of split a third across each one. So you want to be spending a third of the time with the people that are above you, so you can really aspire, see what they're doing, learn their traits. A third of the time with the people on the similar level, because then you can share your frustrations, you can talk tactics, you can have a community that you can be a bit more open and safe in, because you're not talking to someone above you that may be helping you get promoted, but you're also not moaning to the people below you that kind of undermines you. But then also spending that time with the people below, you will learn an incredible amount from them, especially if you lead those teams or lead those groups, or you'll have that help of just showing them the path and being a bit of an inspiration to them, and then showing that, reminding you have that mountain of knowledge that those can learn from. And while we're kind of talking about looking at more senior people, a lot of people end up comparing themselves to others. So whether that's on social media, whether it's looking at your CEO on stage that's presenting, and you're like, oh my God, they're amazing, and I'm on stage next and I'm a bag of spanners. But what you have to remember is they're like 7, 10, 20 years ahead of you in that roadmap of presenting on a stage. And they may have done courses on how to get rid of filler words and how to present with influence and how to communicate, and someone might have written the script for them, but also you don't know what they're like inside. So you don't know if they were scared before they walked on stage, or whether they're having a bit of a panic, or whether they're on stage going, oh, no one likes this presentation, it's not landing, I'm not getting enough smiles, I'm not getting enough claps. But you're sitting there clapping along and looking at them going, I want to be like you. And that comparison, like, is so dangerous to take you away on that path. But you can still be inspired by that person, but it's just, don't assume that they are this like overnight success, polished article, and you should be at the same level as them. Because, you know, also tied to that is just, that's their job. Like, that's what they value. If you're a CEO, it's a lot about engaging with people, you know, being that strong leader, and that's an important that's an important skill that they have to have. If you're a highly technical person, that's not your skill. Yes, you may have to do it from time to time, but it's what you value and what's important to your job and what's important to your life, that's the bits you need to focus on, not all these other bits that make you feel like a fraud that you might do once every 7 years or whatever it is.
That rings so true to me. I mean, that is one thing with, I mean, I have zero desire to sound big-headed here, but that is something people would always say to me, Dina, but you seem so confident. And deep inside, I am like, I've got a knot in my stomach. I'm like, but I've got this front on. And it might have been through skills of, I don't know, I was in a band for 10 years. So that probably gave me a little bit of something, whatever it might be. But inside that feeling of it's knowing how to manage those little things that come up for you along the way, and not comparing yourself to the next person, because you have no idea what is going on for them, and they've just probably learned the skills that you need to learn to be able to work around whatever it is that you've got going on. So not you as in you, Jeremy, but yeah.
I always need to deal with what's going on inside my head. And kind of talking about that, it's I think the last bit I kind of want to touch on is just, you really need to start shifting your view of success from kind of external validation to internal. You know, if you're waiting for your boss to tell you good job every time, you might be waiting a long time. Or maybe you have a boss that says it, but then you'll just sort of chase more validations, whether that's like promotions or whether it's certificates from work or whatever it is. You need to be more focused on that internal validation, being comfortable in your own skin, that did you do everything you could do? Was it to the best of your ability? I think we talk about it a lot in sport, where it's like you can't go as, like, I can't run as fast as Usain Bolt, so I shouldn't compare myself to him. Yeah, I give him a good run for his money a few years back before the knees, but if you trained as well as you could, you ate as well as you could, and you ran as fast as you could on the day, you need to have that understanding that you did the best you could do, and that's an achievement. And I think that's a big move people have to have. It's contentment, but not content as in just sitting back and doing nothing. It's just knowing that you have had a good day, you have done all that you can do, and tomorrow's another day. But the problem is, I'm a high performer at heart, and I almost feel like I have to justify that stuff, because I'm like reeling it back. It's like, no, you still have to like push, you still have to drive, but it is that, like, but there's only so far you can go, and there's only so much you should do before you like, I was bloody good today, and then look to go again, not question every single little tiny thing that went wrong that you didn't even know was going to happen.
Exactly. And just following on from that, in terms of people who might question they might think, oh, this is just me, that I'm riddled with this self-doubt, or this is just my character, or whatever. Let's get into a little bit of psychology here. Going into NLP, imposter syndrome is very much related to a couple of things. One is your family, your parents, your upbringing, and the other one is your personality. So in terms of kind of your family and your upbringing, if you were brought up in a family, I was like that, my father, but yeah, who valued achievement, right? Or my dad would rip me apart if I didn't get the best grades in the class, or I didn't achieve this or did that. And that put me on that path of, I always have to be the best. And until today, and I must say, CrossFit humbled me, because there will always be people who are better. And I had to really learn to be able to deal with that, because it took me a while. It hurt my ego massively. But also, if you come from a family that's characterized by kind of high levels of conflict or low levels of support, that also is, it's very likely to lead to experiencing imposter syndrome. And when it comes to personality traits, a couple of personality traits that have been linked to higher imposter syndrome is low self-efficacy, for example. So if your belief in your ability to succeed in any given situation is low, then you're going to feel imposter syndrome, and you're going to have to work a little bit harder to get through it. The other thing is perfectionism. Again, these are all things that can be changed, but perfectionism plays a huge role in imposter syndrome. If we think that we need to have the perfect script for a conversation, or you can't say the right or the wrong thing, or whatever that might be, then again, you'll procrastinate, which we should do an episode on that. And B, you're never going to hit your high standards, and it's not going to happen. So that's essentially kind of the big part of it. But in terms of identifying imposter syndrome, because again, this is super important. I couldn't identify it before. I couldn't understand what it was. So yeah, so in terms of identifying imposter syndrome, there are kind of five key areas that really helped me. And ask yourself these questions. Do you agonize over the smallest mistakes or flaws in your work? Do they stop you from progressing, right? And then number 2, do you attribute all of your success to luck or some sort of outside force, right? Jeremy's hand goes up. Number 3 is, are you super sensitive when it comes to criticism, even if it's constructive? How do you react to that? Number 4, do you feel like you're eventually going to be found out as a phony, right? That you're living this pretend life and you aren't who you are or what you say you can do. And then number 5, do you downplay your own skill set, your expertise, even in areas where you are genuinely more skilled than other people? Because no matter what, like Jeremy is a king at making pizza in his pizza oven, right? I have no clue how to make pizza. I have zero desire to. So in that respect, I mean, if he says, no, I'm not good at making pizza, to me, he's a pizza genius, right? He sent me pictures and I'm yet to taste, but anyway. But yeah, those are kind of 5 areas.
Well, I did tell you that food was high on my my values. To be honest, I created the teaser video for this, and I had a picture of me doing CrossFit, and in the background there was a someone else that's from the same CrossFit gym, and I had a quick panic on we are actually recording this on launch day, and I had a quick panic. It's like, oh my god, she's in the background and she might not want, because obviously millions of people are going to see that promotional video. And I sent her a message and she's like, what are you going to pay me? Like, what's my commission? And we negotiated that it's going to be slices of pizza. So there we go. I'm getting infamous, like pizza bribes.
Exactly. But yeah, so that's basically it on imposter syndrome. It is a label that I truly despise, because it holds a very heavy load, and it's very easily managed when you've got the right skills. But that's about it. Anything else from you?
I think that's been awesome. I mean, like I said, so many people have it, and yeah, that stigma's got to get taken away. Like you said, the word's terrible. Syndrome to me sounds like something that you can't get rid of. It sounds like a life term, and it's absolutely not. It's having those like simple, practical approaches that you can do to help you in your armory, whether that's like how you do your career or whether it's those mindset shifts that you just need to give yourself. So I think hope everyone found this valuable. Thank you very much for listening. If you like the episode, please subscribe, share it with a friend or a colleague, and leave us a review on whichever podcast platform you're using. We read them all, and it really helps us get the insights and the guidance on where to take the program forward. And also connect with us on social media. Share your journey with us for your high performing and balanced life. And lastly, remember to take the BalanceQ scorecard. The link will be in the show notes. And BalanceQ, or BQ, is your balance quotient. It's your ability to live this high performing and balanced life, both in your personal and professional career. And when you take the scorecard, you get actionable insights, you get the steps that you can take to really take yourself on this journey. So with that, we thank you very much for listening and look forward to you listening on a future episode, and have an amazing day.